Hey everybody, and welcome to this weekend's edition of the chat. I'm Sue Stewart along with Pat LaRose.
Hello everyone.
We have a special guest as we head into the long weekend. We were looking to talk about gardening. There's a lot of people that are going to be excited to get a new hobby on the way because they've been, do I continue schooling the children? Do I put Christmas decorations back up? No, gardening's coming. So we'll try and help them with how they can go about it. But first, Pat, there was some big announcements that happened. Doug Ford had talked about some things opening up this weekend and Tuesday. You want to give us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so some exciting news for sure that we were anticipating, but he announced that Saturday at 12:01 a.m. the following businesses can open: private parks, campgrounds, marinas and boat clubs, golf courses, and businesses that board animals. Obviously, all of these businesses will have protocols in place, I guess, to make sure that everyone's safe and that they're going about it the right way. And also Tuesday, May 19th, they've announced that retail stores with street entrances, with the exception of malls, can reopen with strict measures as well. Seasonal venues like outdoor sports fields, tennis courts, off-leash dog parks, and there's a few more. So if you're looking for the full list, just check your local news media source. But it's exciting news because it shows that we're continuing to make some progress in the economy getting back up and moving again. So, and that's a nice, probably a relief for a lot of the golfers that were anxiously waiting to get out on the golf course, and now that opportunity is there. So that's really exciting.
It's exciting, but yet nerve-wracking at the same time. And before we go any further, I want to mention our great sponsors at Riverside Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram on Vincent Massey Drive. Always a pleasure to have them on board and getting us to be able to do this with the chat each and every week. And this week we mentioned a special guest. It's Kat Rendek, who was with the City of Cornwall and a local food systems facilitator. And I'm going to get your opinion on that sort of thing, because gardening centers, they are doing their best. You can't go in and pick out your things, as far as I understand. Not even really sure. I know they've been doing pickup.
Yeah, so a lot of that actually changed last week, which is really exciting. But it was definitely a big question mark as the season rolled around, how that was going to affect those types of businesses, garden centers, nurseries. So we have a couple of nurseries locally who were doing some of that curbside pickup and delivery as well. So we're excited to see that open up, and people are definitely going to be able to go in and walk around and access all those juicy plants for their garden this weekend.
A lot of people are going to want to start growing their own juicy plants to eat, but before we get there, we still love our takeout. We still love our restaurants. Can I ask you, have you been doing much for takeout?
Yeah, we've been, as a household, definitely trying to support some of those local businesses and and keep up with the flavors. Yeah.
So what would be your top? They came out with a list of top 10 Canadian foods that have been most popular to order out with during this quarantine. What would be your favorite go-to?
I feel like I have to choose between all of them, but I've been definitely frequenting Birchwood. Shout out to Carson out there. Just really good sort of afternoon pick-me-ups, warm, sweet, covering all my bases out there. Yeah.
What about you, Pat? Your family do much for takeout, and if so, what's been your go-to for that?
We do occasionally do takeout or curbside pickup. We've been doing it a little more now, and again, just like Kat, trying to support some of these local businesses. I think, whenever my wife and I are going to order something that we really want, that we're craving, it's more Asian or Oriental. We love Tums, and I think that would probably be the place we would order in more often. But mind you, I say that, but we're still ordering pizza. We're still ordering, chicken from St. Hubert. We're still doing those things. But I think Tums would be, or even Chinese food would be one of the ones that are more often.
I find it funny you say that, because that's where the list was going with I think it was in the top 5. Butter chicken was the number 1 of the top 10 in the quarantine takeout. They also had pad thai and miso soup. It's something I've never, but it's all things that most of us wouldn't be able to make at home. So that's when you crave it and order out. But poutine actually stayed second on the list in the top 5.
Right. And it's interesting because right now this week we would have been doing Taste Your Poutine Edition, and we were really looking forward to that this year because it's one of the more successful ones that we do. And obviously, because of the situation, we really can't do it. and have it be successful for everyone. So it's a sad day, but hopefully this year, as things progress, hopefully we can still do burger and at the end of August, and then maybe we can push 𝙤𝙤 back to the towards the end of the fall. But 𝙤𝙤 is definitely a staple. I'm kind of not surprised though that it's second. I'm actually a little surprised it's second, because I can't say that I've ever ordered, other than like from a pizzeria, a 𝙤𝙤. You know, like I don't think I would order a 𝙤𝙤 from Schnitzel's or Troubles for curbside pickup, because it's not, the fries aren't going to be as crispy when they come right out and hot, and you know what I mean. It's not going to be the same experience as you would dining in the restaurant.
I'll tell you, Kat, he goes straight for the wood oven pizza and that $100 gold burger at Truffles.
Yeah.
No fries for him. Forget that.
Yeah.
Silver and gold.
I will say,
Oh my
I did
God.
get, in terms of just satisfying some cravings, we had purchased spring rolls frozen from Bangkok Noodles. So if you know them, we had those kind of stashed in our freezer for that little craving crunch. Again, supporting someone local. So, and also
nice.
Haitian. So interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know they did that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Pat, you had something you wanted to bring up too, since we're on the topic of food, being it the long weekend, Monday, the holiday, Victoria Day long weekend, May 2-4. Barbecuing is going to be definitely, although I understand red meat prices are going up, people will still want a good steak on the barbecue now that the good weather is finally getting here.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you think May 2-4 weekend, you think camping, barbecues, you know, patio season, you know, doing work outdoors, gardening, which we're going to talk about. One of the interesting articles I read, they were talking about specific foods, like different types of foods to cook on your barbecue. And I can't say that I've ever cooked any of these foods on the barbecue. I'm interested to see if you have. Sue, maybe you have, having a chef in the house. So 3 foods to try on the barbecue this weekend. So as far as greens go, romaine lettuce, spring onion, and cabbage wedges. They say just brush lightly with olive oil and barbecue. Pretty simple enough, right? Yeah. Crostini, so thick slices of country bread rubbed with garlic and brushed with olive oil, are a perfect base for ripe tomatoes and fresh basil. And the last one was lemons. So charred halved lemons are perfect for spritzing over any meat or veg and make deliciously smoked lemonade.
Oh, yeah, no, I never would have thought of that. That's kind of neat.
So I can't say I really experiment that much with barbecuing though. I'm always just cooking the red meats or chicken, you know, maybe some potatoes or something, but I don't really experiment much in the barbecue, which hopefully someday I'll have a smoker and I can get some tips from Chef Luke on unique things to create. But I thought that was interesting. I thought that was unique and maybe something our listeners can try this weekend.
Absolutely. At your house though?
Not at my house.
We up to at a limit? 5 people can stand outside your driveway and look at you, or are we up to 10?
Right. I'll deliver. You can do curbside pickup of my charred romaine lettuce.
All right. Well, Kat Rendek, thank you very much again for taking the time with us. I know we're doing it after work today because you're a busy girl. Again, you're the local food systems facilitator, which dives into gardening, dives into local places as well as events that come up. So gardening, first of all, let's get right to that. Again, people will be eager, whether it's their first time starting this new hobby since they don't have a whole lot else to do, or they're veterans and still not doing it right. Can you give us some tips on where we get started this long weekend if we want to do a garden?
Yeah, definitely. I guess I want to start by saying thank you, obviously, for having me on. This is super fun. Talking about my favorite topics. So this cannot be better after a long work day. When I always think about gardening, I want to say to anyone out there, this is something that anyone can do. I know there's a lot of people who think they can't, or they haven't had success in the past, but really there is a style of gardening that's right for everyone. You just have to kind of figure out what it is. And so I wanted to start just saying that the most important thing at this part in the year is to make sure you plan your garden so that it reflects you and what you're able to do at home. A lot of us are going to be spending more time at home, and so there's going to be a lot more time to learn from from our mistakes in a way. So planning is definitely the key, and something that I didn't always do, but I've learned from more master gardeners that this is super important. So I wanted to quickly show a plan that I do. So the key is to know your space. So do you have a yard? Are you going to do pots? Are you going to do hanging pots? Are you going to build a garden bed? You know, there's lots of different options out there to make gardening personal and fit the space. So my space, I have a front yard garden and a backyard garden. I have lots of pots, and I have lots of perennials, which means they come back every year. And I have lots of annuals that are both edible, so things I can eat like fruits and vegetables, or they are for pollinators. So they're flowers, but they're specifically picked to complement and attract pollinators to my garden, because one of the things that most fruits and vegetables need is pollinators. They need to be pollinated or else they're not going to bear fruit. So I kind of do a mix in my planning, and that's been part of my garden. And so I wanted to show you my map because it's all measured out, and the key is to really know the size of your garden before you even get started, to understand where the sun hits, if you have a lot of shade or sun, and to know if you're going to have access, you know, by pets or by children, or how you want it to look and feel, and that's really reflective of you and your space. So for me, I have a perimeter that's all perennials, and they're edible. So this means they're plants and bushes that come back every year, but they bear fruits. So they're things like currants, strawberries, rhubarb, Saskatoon, Haskell. All of those are really, really easy to grow, and they grow really well in our region. So if you're looking to kind of boost up your garden, I'd strongly, strongly encourage looking at some fruiting perennials. And we have lots of fantastic nurseries in our region, and garden centers that will have these types of perennials that are adapted to our region. And it's kind of a never fail. They're really easy to grow, and you get the benefit of getting to eat them halfway through the summer. So that's fantastic.
No, actually,
Yeah.
what you're doing right now, like I've never ever thought outside of the box. I've gone in, literally just went, oh, there's a garden center, pull in and just pick a mishmash of stuff that I have no idea when it should be planted and why, or even if I can eat it or if it's going to come back. So this much planning already has me just like, whoa, I should really think about this.
Okay, well, not to overwhelm you, but I do, you know, my plan takes me about an hour and a good cup of coffee. And so you can hammer it out. And then I find when you are going to go make those purchases, you feel a lot more confident, and you can ask specific questions to the people working in the garden centers, and they will be able to help you. So if you say, I have a partial sun, partial shade, and I'm looking for it to be edible and a perennial, they're going to have lots of options for you. So you don't even have to really know exactly what you want going in. That's definitely what those staff are going to be there to help you decide on once you're there. I also want to say, you don't have to buy it the first time you go check it out. You can get some options at the garden center, come home, go measure the space again. You take your time. Don't feel compelled to buy everything this weekend. Let's guarantee some success through a little bit more planning. But yeah.
Well, that's it. For a little bit of planning, you're going to have a great garden later. Where my not planning, it's like, I don't even know what's going on out there, if they're alive. So yes, I would be more than happy to take the time now to do that.
Yeah.
So if for somebody like me that's never planted a garden,
Yep.
what would be like, if I was going to plant 3 vegetables this weekend, what are like the 3 easiest vegetables for me to work with? And I have a yard, and I have a lot of sun.
Okay. So I would strongly recommend that you try tomatoes, zucchini, and probably peppers, if you eat those foods.
Yep.
So that's the other thing to think about. So those are all what we would call heat loving, or more of a hot tropical fruit. So they're fruit. So most fruits need sun, but they can take the full sun. So if you forget to water, you know, they're going to be okay. They're going to survive. They also need a lot of space. So one of the things that beginner gardeners do is they try to plant too much into a smaller space. So if you have a really big yard, you can go after some of these larger plants like tomatoes and zucchini and peppers, even squash. They need a lot of room to spread out. So when you when you're considering your space and your planning, that's something to know. I will say though, a lot of plants have versions of them, like there's different versions of a tomato, of different cultivars is what we would call them. So you can have tomatoes that are bush tomatoes, and they actually grow really well in containers. So you want to look for vining tomatoes if you're trying to cover big space. The other thing too, and I kind of alluded to it, but when you're planning your garden, think about things you want to eat. So what are the things that in the summer you are buying all the time at a market, or you're buying at the store? Let's try to plant those things so you can save having to buy those all the time, A, and B, because you clearly enjoy those. And so if you plant things you're going to eat, you're going to take care of it more, and you're gonna want to watch it and learn, and you're going to be really excited when you get to eat that food. So that's also part of the planning, is making sure that you're not just planting a bunch of broccoli, that you're planting fun things that you love.
Well, I will
love broccoli.
If you do decide to plant zucchini, be prepared to give it to your neighbors, because don't you get like an overabundance? Everybody I know that plants zucchini, I get 5 every once in a while. I'm like, I didn't need all those, but they grow a lot, don't they?
Yes, and they grow really well without a lot of attention. So that's why people plant them and always have so much. So they're really easy to grow. So beginner gardeners, it's a good first for them. What I will say is you probably only need 1 zucchini plant. So that is a beginner mistake where they'll do 6 zucchini plants.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you have in your garden? Like, what's the do you do almost every veggie out there, or do you just limit it to a few?
I try to diversify and do a lot. And that's because I love vegetables. My husband and I, we eat a lot of vegetables. And I do something that's called companion planting. So even though I have a really small garden, I put vegetables or lettuce, like greens and legumes that like each other beside each other. So I can actually put them closer together, and I maximize the space. So if people are maybe they've tried gardening for a few years, that's kind of the next level, is to work on something called companion planting. So we have a lot of leafy greens, things that are called brassicas. So the broccolis, the kales, kohlrabies, mustard green based things. We do a lot of that because we do a lot of salads in the summer. And that stuff also overwinters. So we will keep that in our garden all the way to December. So we're eating fresh greens from our garden from now to December.
Wow.
When you're cutting the leafy greens, they're growing back, right? You're cutting them at a certain spot so they'll come back again? That's what you mean?
Yeah. So yes, depending on the green. So if it's lettuces, we tend to eat a lot of that. And then I will plant another round of lettuce in July to keep it going. But things like kale, yeah, you would just break off what you need for that meal, and it's going to keep going. Kale can actually grow to be about 4 to 5 feet tall if you let it go, and it's really nourished. So it just keeps going.
Wow.
And there's different varieties. So if you're looking for kind of that 3-season garden, so stuff you can eat in spring and summer and fall, we have a lot of really great options, and they're just people will want to look for things that are called cold hardy. Usually on most of the seed packets or varieties, it'll say cold hardy, which will mean it will go all the way into November or December.
So your dating service in your garden is going to continue on for months. Everybody's getting
yes.
Yeah. I love it. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. If I could also, I have one more thing is in terms of planning. So sometimes people think they need a lot of flat space to garden, and I would strongly encourage people to think about going up. And the reason is you can do a lot of things with trellises and poles. So if you have a smaller space, don't be afraid to construct something that a cucumber vine can grow up, or a cherry tomato vine can grow up, or beans or peas or squash. I actually there was one year I grew about 20 butternut squash in a 20-gallon pot with a huge trellis. And so it just created its own kind of wall divider of squash. And it was really beautiful. And it only took up this, that much space. So don't be afraid to think up.
I really like that idea because it also gives you something to look at, and perhaps these little critters that are on the doing the circles around your garden, they're not looking up.
Exactly. Yes. And there's some other things to consider, and not to get too detailed, but there's a lot of kind of pests. And so some of those things, when they're on the ground, they'll start eating your squash for you. That's a good example, or cucumbers. So going up really helps. And it's appealing. It's lovely to see kind of a wall of green if you're on your porch or a balcony in the middle of summer. It creates a lot of shade for you if you're sitting there. So there's lots of additional benefits as well.
Well, I have been not a gardener. I grew up with gardens. The only thing that I was ever picking were the weeds, and we had all of our relatives, it seemed, came and used our garden, which was probably 2 acres. Wow. But my brother and I were responsible for weeding it. So that's probably the reason I haven't gone back to gardening, because I don't see the benefits of the weeds, and that was my only purpose: get rid of the weeds. We pickled everything. My mother was always like that, and I think a lot of people are going to go back to that, doing their own canning and preserving. Stewed tomatoes, I still get them from my mother every year. It's exciting because stewed tomatoes from a garden make the best spaghetti sauce in the entire world. And when you switch back during the winter months or summer months before they get stewed, you're like, I think people are going to get excited about food again, that they can do it themselves.
Yeah. And so through my sort of community networks, we've seen this. We've seen people in the last couple of months just take an interest, and it's not necessarily that they're going to do everything, but I love that people are interested, because I think it just opens the possibility for them to learn new things and new habits, new traditions for themselves or their family, whatever that might be. I think it's really exciting, and there's so much opportunity to continue to share and learn from each other. I mean, if we think about how many people have learned how to make bread in the last few months, I look forward to August when everyone's talking about canning in the same way.
Well, that's it. My mother has done it. Her mother before her did it. I kind of stopped the chain, but now my daughter, who's going to be 13, maybe she'll take an interest in that, because there's nothing better than going down into the cold storage, grabbing that when you're about to start whipping something up. It's like, I've got that, and it was put away fresh.
Yeah. Well, and so, I mean, as a great example, I had a bunch of apples from Marlin's in October, and I just made them into a apple pie filling, did like 10 jars of that, really forgot about it. And then while I was home so much, I remembered it was there and just made a bunch of pies and crisps. It was an easy breakfast option. It was already ready made, but it tasted incredible. It was just so nostalgic to remember the fall smells and tastes 6 months later. It was really nourishing to do that.
I love it. And I love all the advice you've given us. And we'll probably put some things up on our Facebook to share along with that too.
Yeah, fabulous.
Yeah, and
thanks,
Kat, you said that there is something coming up, the Incredible Edibles on the Road event?
Yes. So one of the groups that I'm part of in this community is called Transition Cornwall Plus. Its Food Action Group is a branch of Transition Cornwall Plus. And we do an annual event called Incredible Edibles. But it's a giant festival. And so with the physical distancing restrictions, we're not able to do it in its traditional form. So instead, we are taking our 1,000 vegetable plants that are all in little pots or big pots, and we're distributing to some of our social services and social housing, but also we're going to do little pop-up shops throughout the community, and people can come and pick up a free vegetable plant to try gardening for the first time, or if they just want to try a new variety. So that information in the map and the timeline on that, it will all be on the Transition Cornwall Plus website. So it's very exciting. It'll be the last week of May. And yeah, it's just free. We want to encourage gardening in the community.
Right.
I love
Very cool.
I like that people can reach out to you that easily you can YouTube stuff, but to actually talk to a person. I love the fact that we've got you on right now. I didn't really know there was that much involved. I like diagrams. I like the fact that you're putting edibles around the outside and they're coming back.
Yeah.
Just simple little tips that I just, I plant a couple things and good luck, guys.
This makes it really fun. And I will say some of the garden planning that I do in February in the middle of winter when I need to be hopeful and look forward to spring. So it can be really fun once you get into it.
Wait, you're talking about indoor planting, right? You're not shoveling snow and finding a hole?
No, I meant like the map part, right? buying my seeds and making my map and thinking about the spring with anticipation. This map has been drawn for a while now, and but it has a timeline to it. So I actually put all of this, not all of it, but a lot of it into the ground a couple weeks ago because it was time.
Wonderful. Pat, did you have any other questions for Kat today?
Is there anywhere people can go who are looking for information to get some of these tips, or even with some of the things that you were talking about?
Yeah, so we have a lot. I would say a good resource is online right now with Transition Cornwall Plus. There's also a really good resource called the Sustain Ontario Edible Education Network. They have a really extensive list right now of education for youth and families. So if you're looking to make gardening kind of a homeschooling activity, that's the place to go, because and it's good for all ages. But if you want to get a little bit more in terms of an education piece out of it, that's a really good resource, and it's online. So Edible Education Network. And then the Canadian Organic Growers, which is out of Ottawa, they have a lot of fantastic resources online for home gardening too. So some good things there, and I'm sure you can find the links. I can send them to you as well.
Great.
Absolutely love it. And it's nice to get the family involved too. When you say educational, just for every age, bringing the kids out, having fun, and getting mom and dad's advice once in a while. I'm sure they would be loving to know that some people are going to go back to these sort of old school ways. And I'm saying old school ways because, like I said, I haven't gardened since I was a child, and it was merely just weed pulling for me.
Yeah. So about the weeds, though, I want to touch on that because it sounds like you need to learn a little bit more about mulching. So I might send you some information about that, because I mulch, and it means I have to weed, 50% less than anyone else. So there's some tips and tricks out there.
When this was going on.
Yeah. But
right.
If you're scared to try it again, we can get you mulching, and you won't have any weeds.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. I do plan on trying it again. And anything else you want to touch base on before we say our goodbyes?
No, this is great. I look forward, if you welcome it, to have some of your fans submit pictures of their gardens. I think that'd be really exciting to see if this is inspiring, or if they have further questions. I'd love to keep the conversation going. I think it's the time for that right now.
I love that you called them fans. Well, Rendek, I appreciate your time today, and I look forward to seeing pictures of your garden once it's all said and done, because, well, obviously you're going to have it in shifts, some later, and right into November. That's amazing to me.
It's all possible.
Really appreciate you being a part of our chat today. I know there's going to be a lot of people that will take this advice and look for all the different things that you've given to them in order for them to look up how to get the perfect garden, whether they're first timers or have been doing it for years and just not getting it right. I think you've given us a lot to work with.
Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. And a special thanks to our sponsor, Riverside Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Just so you know, they are still able to assist you virtually as of right now. Make sure to visit them on their website at riversidechrysler.ca to browse their inventory. You can also chat with them directly there, and to stay connected with them on social media, that's Riverside Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. And remember, when you go forward, be safe, be kind, stay healthy, and we'll talk to you again next week on The Chat.